All right, YouTube. So I put this off for about as long as I could. My last WandaVision episodes 1 through 4 review. I really tried to stay as spoiler free as possible, and I said that I would release additional review videos coming out. But boy, let me tell you, after episode 5, I have no idea how I can talk about WandaVision and not talk about spoilers. There's things that happen in episode 5, and now episode 6 has come out, so I'll be discussing episode 6 as well. I can no longer discuss WandaVision without openly discussing spoilers. So this is the official spoiler warning for WandaVision episodes 5 and 6. And this is also a spoiler warning for Marvel in general. My son and I had a discussion while watching WandaVision. Kevin Feige and Marvel really reward the viewers that have seen the 20 plus films. It's really rewarding watching a show like WandaVision with all the callbacks they do to the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In addition to being up on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you have to be aware of the Fox X-Men universe that Marvel finally was able to buy the rights back to. I don't want to get too much into the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe compared to the Fox X-Men universe and Sony's Spider-Man. I'll get into it a little bit, but wow, these last 2 episodes of WandaVision, I mean, this is a show that went from just being a quaint little show with some kind of strange intricacies to now the scope and the impacts of what are happening now are getting really big. And it has me reinvested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe completely. We'll go ahead and start with episode 5. I want to say we're probably in the late 80s. Had very much a Full House vibe to it. And Wanda and Vision now are proud parents. Hold on, my doggo's upset. What's the matter, doggo? Oh! 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 Harvey, say hello to YouTube. YouTube, say hello to Harvey. How are you? Are you okay? We're talking about WandaVision. What do you think of that? Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't know what to think. Yeah. So Wanda and Vision, they have their twin babies. They're trying to get them to sleep. They're having some trouble getting them to sleep. Agnes shows up, their neighbor. I think she's their neighbor. She tends to not always live in the same house. And she always happens to show up at a very convenient time. And she's definitely kind of very self-aware of what's going on. She kind of calls out the fact that they are in a very meta TV show. And she asks Wanda if she wants her to start that scene over. And Vision's picking up on this. Vision is starting to pick up on there's something Wanda's not telling him. And that is really kind of what drives this episode through. Vision, he goes off to work. Wanda tells the kids that he needed a distraction because the kids age themselves up twice in this episode. They go from being babies to being about 5 or 6 years old. And then they age themselves up to 10 years old because there's a little puppy. While Vision is at work, he gets more interaction with one of his coworkers and kind of pulls him out of the trance that he was in. And he says, you know, everything that he's been experiencing, he's been in pain. Nothing has been his own. He has no control over himself or his body or his mind. And it's very much like torture and agony and just sadness. And the guy's freaking out, wanting to know where his phone is, and he's called his sister. So Vision kind of zaps him back in and puts him back into Wanda's little universe. Meanwhile, on the outside of Wanda's little hex is what they're referring to it as. You have the Sword agents, and especially their lead agent, who's kind of being a bit of a douchebag. He's definitely taking on the antagonistic role. He and Monica Rambeau agree to send an older style technology drone into the Hex universe to try to communicate with Wanda. But while it's there, and Wanda sees it, Wanda's not communicating back, so the main Sword agent kind of overrides the controls on the drone, and they try to fire a missile at Wanda. And of course, that doesn't go well. So, one of the coolest scenes of the show so far, Wanda comes out of the Hex into the normal world, dragging the drone behind her, throws it out there. I think this belongs to you. And of course, there's all the sword agents with their guns pointing at her. They have the little green sight lasers pointing at her. And, there's a little bit of a back and forth. Definitely Wanda seeming to be a little bit of a villainous type character now instead of the hero that we're used to, where we really start to understand she is aware of what is happening. She calls this her home. She says she has everything she wants and no one is ever going to take it from her again. So she understands what is happening. She understands that she has a very massive amount of control over what is going on. There's still the question as to how it began, but she understands she has control over what is going on. There's this wonderful little moment where she turns and she flicks her hand, just so flippant and defiant. And it was like definitely kind of like shrugging the dirt off her shoulder kind of moment where she flips the sword agent's guns at himself. It felt like a mic drop kind of moment. Like, I have the power here. I have the control. Don't mess with me. Leave me alone. She goes back. And then this is where the climax of this episode really comes to. Vision confronts Wanda, lets her know, I know that you are in control of these people. I know that you're suppressing their minds. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? I have no memory of anything before this place. They really kind of go at it. They're yelling at each other. And Vision, who has always historically been a very stoic character, and here he's yelling, he's pointing, he's shouting at Wanda. He's very human in this episode. In his confronting her, he wants to know why she's controlling everything. But she responds saying that she's not controlling everything. And she says she doesn't know how it began. And I want to believe her. And then that was when the big twist of the episode comes. There's a ring at the doorbell, and standing there is her dead brother, Pietro, Quicksilver, from the X-Men Fox franchise, that shows up at her door at the end of the episode. Completely blew my mind. Something a lot of fans, a lot of people have wondered was how they were going to introduce the mutants and the X-Men into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What they've done here by bringing in this Quicksilver, they have introduced mutants and that Quicksilver into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's a big deal. And there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of conjecture online as to whether or not this Quicksilver is really Quicksilver, or if he's Mephisto pretending, or someone else pretending to be Quicksilver and is really just there to kind of pull information out of Wanda. Even if that's the case and it's not really Quicksilver, taking that actor that played that Quicksilver in the X-Men franchise is Marvel as a company acknowledging the Fox X-Men universe as existing. It's not retconning. It's not pretending that pay no attention to those never happened, even though I do think some of us would wish none of those movies happened. It's an acknowledgement that yes, that's out there, that exists, and this is where multiverse comes into it, because this series is supposed to lead up to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness that comes out in 2022. But then there's also the third Spider-Man movie that they're getting ready to make that's supposed to include different universe of Spider-Man. So they're getting ready to introduce the multiverse to the world. And it's very exciting stuff. And it's acknowledging, instead of pretending like these other franchises that have made a lot of money in the past and were out there, instead of saying that they don't exist, it's acknowledging that they're out there, but they're just a different universe. And I think that's really exciting. And I think there's a lot of really fun things that they could do with that. That is really where episode 5 ends. Cut to episode 6. We're now definitely in the mid-90s. We get a very Malcolm in the Middle introduction to the show. And, Quicksilver, he's in the show. And it's a Halloween episode. And what's so great about it is Quicksilver, Wanda, and Vision, they're wearing their very early 70s, 80s inspired comic book costumes. They make fun of themselves, but it's a really great look. It's a nice nod to the fans to have that in there. But this episode is where things really continue to go off the rails even more. I know this isn't a perfect synopsis of the episodes. I'm going off memory here. I don't have notes. I'm just kind of rambling on about the episode as I talk about it. So forgive me if I'm not 100% spot on with the sequence of events that happened in the show. Vision still, he tries to have some subtlety to it, but you can tell that Vision still does not trust Wanda. He doesn't want to go with Wanda to take the kids trick-or-treating. Her brother agrees that he'll go in, he'll step in, he'll be their father figure, he even says. And so Vision kind of goes off on this episode and has his own side story where he says that he's doing kind of neighborhood watch patrols when it's later found out that he's not on duty for neighborhood watch that day. And Wanda and her brother are taking the kids trick-or-treating. Of course, there's still the outside the Hex universe, but that was really kind of underplayed this week. We did learn some additional things that how they believe that as you go in and out of the Hex, it changes your body in a molecular level, which could be an additional indicator as to maybe this is how they're going to introduce mutants. I don't know. But the real key to the story here, the important beats of the story, happened inside the Hex with Wanda and her brother, and then again with Vision. Vision is continuing to push the boundaries and go around town, and he starts to see some pretty strange things. He sees some neighbors or some people on the kind of outskirts of town, almost like they're stuck in a loop. And there's, you've seen it in the trailers with the lady kind of in a loop, stuck, she's hanging up a decoration and she's just there stuck in a loop. But then there's a single tear that goes down her eye. I mean, she's stuck there. She knows she's stuck there, and she's in agony. She's crying without being able to cry. That was pretty disturbing, pretty powerful. But then he gets even further out, and everyone's just kind of frozen still. No one's moving. No one's really interacting. Then at the same time, you have Wanda and her brother having a conversation, a very open conversation about what she is doing and why she is doing it. In his conversation with her, it almost seems like he's pumping her for information. So we don't know. I mean, is that really Quicksilver? Or, is it someone pretending to be Quicksilver and just appearing to her to pump her for information? Did Doctor Strange send him in here from a different universe because her brother is dead and this is just another multiverse version of Quicksilver? And while they're having that conversation, Vision gets all the way to the edge of the Hex, and there he sees Agnes sitting in a car, stopped and frozen at a stop sign with the car running. And so he approaches her, and he does this thing that he does where he zaps her out, and this is where you have the scene from the trailers where she asks him, "Am I dead?" And he's like, "No, why would you think that?" She's like, "Well, because you are." And he's like, I'm what? "Well, you're dead. You're dead." And she keeps repeating it and getting loud about it. And then she kind of flips and she does this big old witch cackle, to which causes Vision to kind of put her back into her trance, and she goes on her merry way. And so Vision, he's freaking out at this point. He doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't know who the Avengers are. He doesn't remember anything before the Hex. He then goes to the edge of the Hex and starts to walk out. And as he walks out, he's able to get all the way outside the Hex, but just barely. He falls to his knees, and you see that the Hex is trying to pull him back in, and it's breaking him apart. It looks very painful. Wanda's kids, who are now starting to show that they have their own powers. One kid has super speed. The other kid has the same telekinesis powers that Wanda does. He senses his father's in trouble and in agony. And so Wanda focuses, and she just finally she expands the Hex. It grows so large that it not only re-envelops Vision and brings him back inside of the Hex so he can live, but it then grows so large that it envelops nearly all of the Sword agents. The only ones that got away are the douchebag agent that's in charge of Sword. I don't even remember his name. I'm not bothering to remember it because he's really kind of a dick. And then you have Monica Rambeau and the FBI agent, the guy from Fresh Off the Boat. I don't remember his name either, but he was also an Ant-Man. Really great actor. Great. I enjoy the scenes that he's in. I just wish I could remember his character's name. And that's pretty much where the episode ends. I mean, you have a whole bunch of Sword agents that are inside of the Hex now. They've been turned into the circus, and you have Kat Dennings' character who has been sucked inside of the Hex, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes forward. But again, this is another episode where things really start to go off the rails, and the show is just really, I have no idea where they're going to take it in these final 3 episodes. But I am definitely completely reinvested. I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of conjecture out there about Agnes's character. You know, is she, you know, related to the Mephisto and bringing in and how this all started? Could she be involved? I think there's a lot of credence behind that. I'm really hoping the Evan Peters Quicksilver they brought in is the Quicksilver from the X-Men universe. Having that be more than just an Easter egg call out to the Fox franchise, that would be really meaningful to me. I know the X-Men franchise has some detractors and some of the movies are not very strong, but Days of Futures Past is actually my favorite X-Men movie, and that's the first one he was in, and he has a really great scene in it. But WandaVision is really quite fantastic, and I'm really enjoying the hell out of it. So anyway, I've been talking for nearly half an hour now about the last 2 episodes of WandaVision and the Marvel Universe. This is going to be an absolute nightmare to edit, so we'll see how much of this makes it to YouTube. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate a like. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you next time.